Welcome to the 5th Annual Women's Liberation Conference in Brisbane, Meanjin, and happy International Women's Day. We meet on unceded Aboriginal land taken by force, and we acknowledge the women of the women's resistance, as well as Aboriginal elders past, present and to come. Especially, I want to acknowledge the women of the second wave who laid the groundwork for so many subsequent gains and who worked in a revolutionary way. I came in towards the end of the second wave, but I know there are women in the room who were active through that period, and to you I pay tribute. Today, we resist the current setbacks orchestrated by the state and the powerful corporations, and we have much to learn from the women's liberation movement of the second wave. In holding this women-only conference and in rallying on Sunday with other women and with men in the defence of women's sex-based rights and children's safeguards, we're defying the Queensland Government, the state in general, and the big corporations. Women-only gatherings are now frowned on and legislated against because men in this state and others are now regarded as women by their own self-declaration. Shame. In Queensland, that was legislated on the 14th of June last year, a date that is etched in my memory because mine was the, I thought, very loud voice who intervened in the Parliament debate and yelled out in defence of women's rights. It's the first time I've been chucked out of the Queensland Parliament. It may not be the last. Many of the T-shirts and corflutes and banners around the room probably fall foul of the Queensland Government's beefed up anti-vilification law passed some months ago. Although the Attorney-General simply refuses to respond to citizen written requests for clarification of the law. So it's a case of suck it and see. While we may fall foul of the state laws in holding a women's conference, our rights are protected under CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, a UN convention signed in 1979, including by Australia, and ratified a few years later, as well as being a core plank in Sal Grover's defence of hosting a women-only app. CEDAW was the basis for the Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights, launched by Women's Declaration International in 2019, and hopefully we're all signatories. With more than 37,000 signatures globally, the Declaration is supported by the largest group of volunteer women in the world formed to win back the sex-based rights of women and girls. We're honoured to have one of the WDI directors, Sheila Jeffries, from the UK, here at our little Women's Liberation Conference. It's not Philia, but we're here. Welcome, Sheila, and to your partner Anne as well, for attending for the second year in a row. Sheila has inspired many radical feminists across several decades. She'll be presenting 2 papers at this conference. WDI runs 2 webinars each week. Each is very valuable, and although one of them is in the middle of Saturday night for us, we can watch them both on YouTube later. There's also a monthly webinar delivered by the Australian and New Zealand chapters of WDI. Anna Kerr is our country contact for WDI. You can go onto her WDI email list if you want. You can also be a part of an informal WDI Australian Zoom chat each month, where we report to each other on what we're doing to advance the work of the Declaration. I'd also like to welcome our second overseas guest, Jill Ovens, from the Women's Rights Party, New Zealand. Jill will present at the conference and she will also speak at the IWD rally on Sunday. Welcome, Jill. It's great to have you here. And I'd like to send our regards via you, Jill, to Tanya Sturt from New Zealand. Tanya couldn't be here this year, but she presented at our conference last year, and it was fabulous to meet her. And then she went home to New Zealand to be the organiser for the Posey Parker tour. Tanya worked hard to save Posey at Albert Park when the ideologues attacked in a hideous display of pure woman hatred. Unfortunately, Tanya went down herself and was kicked viciously. Thank you, Tanya. I want to thank the two women who formed a selection panel with me to choose the papers to be presented at this conference, Eileen Haley and Helen Daintree. It was a pleasure to work with those women. I'd also like to thank the three-woman panel who selected the women to receive this year's Eva Bacon and Magdalene Burns Awards. Thank you to Judy Patterson, Claire Hall and Denny Sevenoaks. They had a difficult job. We haven't had as many nominations as this year, and they did the job well. These awards will be announced at the dinner tonight. I want to thank our artists who completed artworks for tonight's awards, Donna Malone and Claire. And in Donna's case, also for the fabulous promotion posters for the weekend. Thank you. Coming close to last, but definitely not least, I want to thank the women who support me by taking on practical tasks. Kerry and Millie, who will help me chair, Nina, who will chair the rally on Sunday, Kaylee, who will video presentations, Christine, Felicity, Kathy, Ali, Sue and Steph, and I hope I haven't missed anyone out, who will do other jobs. Thank you. And I want to thank all our presenters and discussion group leaders. You have their biographical notes in your paper collection. Finally, I want to thank everyone who's attended, all of you. You'll determine the success of the conference, because this conference is not only about hearing great speakers, although we will, it's also about engaging in discussion and debate and connecting with other women who will also take forward the activist agenda to win back our rights. And it's about having fun, as Kerry keeps reminding me. How did this conference begin? I hadn't attended the IWD rally for some years, but I went in 2017 because I was asked to speak. And I was appalled to see it had been taken over by liberal feminists pushing the men can be women line, but not being overly concerned by rape, sex trafficking and other forms of men's violence against women. So IWD Brisbane Meanjin began in 2017 as a Facebook page, and a few of us decided that in 2018 we would take back the IWD rally. Socialist Alliance and the Greens, and I know there's a few ex-members of the Greens here today, incited violence against us, both before and at the rally, and we would have been hurt if the police hadn't acted quickly whenever we were threatened. And that's no mean feat for this current time, when women who defend women's rights on the streets risk physical injury every time we exercise our right to organise. There's a narrative that suggests that street action in Brisbane to defend women's sex-based rights against gender ideology began when Posey Parker came to town a year ago. That's untrue. Apart from the annual feminist IWD rally since 2018, we'd been doing frequent street actions for 2 years before Posey arrived. Of course, our events weren't as big, because women are more fearful of attending our events. We'd done walks through the mall wearing our corflutes, we'd handed out flyers, we'd done similar walks through South Bank, we'd protested at the ABC against its biased coverage. Since June, of course, we've protested 9 or 10 times at ALP MP offices, and we always get positive public support. There are two things I say to myself and others. None of us can do everything, but every one of us can do something. That means we identify the skills we have or the work that we like doing, and we apply those skills to this struggle. Some of us, not me, are writers and researchers and use those skills in the struggle. Others, again not me, might be powerful artists or wonderful cooks, and we have some of those women here today, and they use those skills in service of women. Some of us are speakers or organisers or determined street protesters or money raisers, and we use those skills. And the other thing I say to myself and to other women is, do what you're comfortable with and then do more. Because if we only do what we're comfortable with, we won't win. And if we only fight for as long as we're comfortable, we won't win. We have to keep going and keep going over and over again, because that's the way change will occur for us. I know women who were sporadically active prior to sex self-ID being legislated in Queensland, and as soon as the law went through, they stopped. They were dispirited and gave up. Wrong approach. As New Zealander Judith Hobson said just a few days ago, when her young male attacker was discharged without conviction for bashing her at the Albert Park women's rights event in Auckland, Judith said, "Keep fighting, ladies. This is just the beginning." Encouraging other women to go beyond likes on social media is something that we can do. Many women never get beyond that stage. Hopefully, more will join us. I want to say that there's sometimes a lot of focus on being pure in our movement, of not wishing to associate with others who advocate for women's rights, who may not agree with us on other things. I sometimes see purism used, especially by the politically inexperienced, as a weapon to put down other women. For example, women saying, "Oh, I'm not going to support her on sex-based rights, she's right-wing." Or women saying, "Oh, I won't come to your meeting on sex-based rights if you platform so-and-so, because she doesn't support abortion." Purism is silly because it's self-defeating. It can also be arrogant and quite superior. But above all, it isn't even a hallmark of left-wing politics, although it's often used that way. It's never been a hallmark of left-wing politics. The left has achieved when it's engaged with others who agree on one issue. For example, in some places in Australia, the fledgling movement to oppose Australia's involvement in the US war against Vietnam, and this is in the 60s, the fledgling movement was made up of two small groups, the Communist Party of Australia and the Christians. Poles apart politically, but agreed that we needed to get out of Vietnam. Now, I don't think that they ever formalised that cooperation, but for years they worked together on that issue, and it works well. I'd also suggest that the moralising that frequently goes with purism is used against women by women and men in a way that doesn't happen when it's a primarily male-led movement. So let's stop the moralising. Let's stop the politically immature purism. Let's listen over the next couple of days to the presenters, to each other. Let's engage in debate and discussion. Let's inspire each other and plan. Thank you.